A young man had slain the last dragon in the world. He forged the dragon's bones into an unmatched sword and bathed in its blood, making his skin invulnerable. Yet, as fate would have it, a falling leaf had landed on his back during the bath, becoming his only weakness. The story unfolded in medieval Europe. The Huns were advancing westward, and war had engulfed many peoples. The proud kingdom of Burgundy fought desperately for survival. Their king led the army to defend the nation's borders, but unexpectedly he was ambushed during the march. An arrow pierced his heart, and his body was soon returned to the capital. Marshal Hagen, unable to protect the king, was filled with deep remorse. Princess Kriemhild noticed his guilt and privately comforted him, saying that her father's death was not his fault. Hagen, gazing at the woman he secretly loved, suppressed his feelings and vowed to always protect the royal family. Soon after, Crown Prince Gunther ascended the throne. Surrounded by threats on all sides, Burgundy urgently needed strong allies. The quickest way to form such alliances was through marriage. The princes debated the matter endlessly. Eventually, King Gunther made a decision. He would marry his sister Kriemhild to Ardo of Lombardy, whose wife had recently died in childbirth. This alliance would help secure Burgundy's eastern borders. The marriage was scheduled for summer. Though bitter, Hagen obeyed the king's command. He privately informed Kriemhild of the arrangement, hoping she would be prepared. The princess understood that aligning with the East had been her father's wish, so she did not oppose the marriage. That night, thunder and lightning filled the sky. 11 foreign cavalrymen camped outside the city gates. They bore no banners and appeared to be wandering warriors. Their presence stirred unease, though they remained outside the walls. The following morning, several strangers approached the gates. Kriemhild watched from hiding and noticed that one cloaked man's face could change at will. King Gunther received the lead knight and learned his name was Siegfried, son of King Sigmund. The two nations had once been allies. Young and impulsive, Siegfried immediately challenged Gunther to a duel. But the people blocked the king. For Burgundians never fought alone. They were a united family. If Siegfried wished to challenge the king, he had to defeat them all first. Realizing this, Siegfried did not press the issue. Gunther arranged guest quarters for his party. However, Kriemhild remained uneasy about the cloaked man, whose eyes seemed inhuman. She recalled legends of nocturnal creatures who could invade human dreams. To ease her concern, Hagen monitored Siegfried's men at night. They drank and made merry without caution. Only the cloaked man slipped into a dark warehouse. Hagen followed and found only a few tattered bags. Just then, a drunken Siegfried emerged from his room. Hagen warned him to leave immediately, saying there was no place for him in Burgundy. That night, Hagen was tormented by nightmares. The next day, a white horse ran wild. Kriemhild chased after it, and Hagen, concerned for her safety, followed. She failed to catch the horse and confided in Hagen that she did not wish to marry far away. In the following days, Siegfried claimed he had a prophetic dream. It foretold that Queen Brunhild of Iceland possessed magical powers. Everyone grew solemn at his words, but Siegfried laughed heartily, as if it had all been a joke. Kriemhild remained secluded in the women's quarters. Siegfried, flirtatious and brash, insisted on meeting her. He barged into her room and was promptly expelled. His jokes at dinner unsettled Gunther, but Siegfried made it known he longed to meet Queen Brunhild. Hagen advised the king not to trust him and suggested they keep Kriemhild at home. Even without allies, Burgundy was strong. Trusting Hagen, Gunther decided to cancel the marriage. The next day, however, a stabbed corpse was found outside the city. Hagen reported that the Saxons and Danes had rebelled and reached the Oren River. Burgundy was now isolated. Gunther instructed Hagen to speak with Siegfried, hoping the warrior would aid them. If he agreed, Gunther was willing to marry him to the princess. For Burgundy's sake, Hagen carried out the king's order. At the guest palace, Hagen met only the cloaked man, a dwarf named Alberic. The dwarf noticed the dragon scar on Hagen and explained that Siegfried had slain the dragon, bathed in its blood to become invulnerable, and forged the sword Balmung from its bones. However, a leaf had landed on his back during the bath, marking his only weakness. Before Hagen could return, Siegfried had already received the king's permission and promised to wield Balmung for Burgundy. Before the battle, Hagen bid farewell to Kriemhild, who had learned that he had persuaded the king to cancel the marriage. She asked why he had done so, but Hagen did not voice his true feelings. The army advanced along the Rhine Valley. Hagen devised a battle plan. Knowing the Saxons and Danes lacked discipline, their troops had to maintain strict order. But Siegfried believed in brute strength and ignored his advice. One night Hagen saw him ride into the woods. The next morning, Siegfried returned with the Saxon king's head. Demoralized, the enemy army collapsed. Siegfried led the charge, and the soldiers, ignoring Hagen's commands, followed him. Hagen had no choice but to join the assault. While Siegfried was invincible, the rest of the soldiers were not. Hagen's best archer died in the battle, and Hagen himself was struck in the eye. Siegfried saved him in time, and the war ended in victory. The people praised Siegfried as a hero. Meanwhile, Kriemhild tended to the unconscious Hagen, but the public celebration was loud and irreverent. Kriemhild confronted Siegfried, warning him not to dishonor the fallen. But Siegfried declared that death was part of war and refused to mourn silently. He proposed that Alberich could heal Hagen. When Alberich touched Hagen, he also awakened buried memories. Hagen was from the kingdom of Tronje. The old king of Burgundy had taken him in, claiming a dragon had destroyed his home. But the truth was different. War had destroyed Hagen's homeland, and it was the dragon who had saved him. That explained the claw marks on Hagen's back. When Hagen awoke, he visited the graves of fallen soldiers. Siegfried bluntly told him that even given another chance, he would do nothing differently. Kriemhild saw that Siegfried had no lust for power and gave him her heart. She had given Hagen a chance, but he never declared his love. The princess followed Siegfried outside the city and saw ruins of an ancient war. She had always wondered why Alberich followed Siegfried. He explained that he had killed Alberich's master, the last dragon. As Kriemhild and Siegfried spent more time together, their bond deepened. Meanwhile, the Huns, led by Zil, defeated the Lombards. Burgundy needed powerful allies. Gunther still longed for Queen Brunhild of Iceland, hoping her divine power could turn the tide. Gunther's second brother believed he had been bewitched by Alberich and imprisoned the dwarf. Upon learning this, Hagen visited Alberich, asking about the Queen of Iceland. Alberich explained that Siegfried was drawn to distant, unreachable things. Upon hearing of Brunhild's power, he had traveled to Eisenstein and spent a year with her. Though they developed feelings, Siegfried had eventually left, breaking her heart. The next day, Hagen urged Kriemhild to stay away from Siegfried, only to learn that she and Siegfried planned to marry. Kriemhild knew Hagen didn't trust him, but believed that once married, Siegfried would fully belong to Burgundy. For Burgundy's sake, Hagen no longer opposed the union. Kriemhild asked Hagen to speak to Gunther on her behalf. He did so, and Gunther approved the marriage, on one condition. Siegfried must first win Queen Brunhild's heart. If Burgundy gained this Valkyrie, they could repel the Huns. Suppressing his anger, Siegfried accepted. The fleet set sail for Eisenstein, but was struck by a storm. Nearly all of Gunther's attendants drowned. Siegfried, familiar with the Queen's rules, told Hagen to disarm and follow General Senua to the castle beneath the volcano. As they entered, they were beaten and thrown into sacks. When Hagen awoke, Gunther and Siegfried were gone. He explained to Senua that the king wished to marry the queen. But to do so, one had to defeat her. Many had tried and died. Gunther reappeared, enchanted, and wielding a sword the queen had given him. He declared he would fight for her. Fearing for Gunther's life, Hagen planned to escape with him. When Gunther refused, Siegfried admitted he couldn't defeat Brunhild. Alberich, however, had a plan. In a cave, Alberich drew blood from Hagen and Gunther and cut Siegfried's back, his weak spot. Mixing their blood, he pushed Siegfried and Hagen into the water. As they nearly drowned, Gunther drank the blood and gained their strength. He returned and challenged the queen. At Senua's signal, Brunhild struck first. But Gunther, now empowered, wounded her. She recognized Siegfried's eyes in his face and lost focus. Gunther claimed victory. The divine power left him, and Brunhild, honoring her promise, left with them. They returned to Burgundy, but the city had already been attacked by the Huns. The borders fell. Brunhild's soldiers were now Burgundy's last hope. The two couples held their weddings on the same day. Hagen smiled as he watched the joyous princess. Yet Siegfried and Brunhild exchanged a long, knowing glance. After the wedding, the queen realized Gunther had deceived her. She vented her fury by sparring with Siegfried, but with war looming, she accepted her fate. The night before battle, Hagen rallied the frightened soldiers, urging them to trust Brunhild. She would guide their souls to the gods, even in death. On the battlefield, none fled. Brunhild charged first and shattered the Hun army. Victory followed, and Siegfried was again drawn to her. The next day, Gunther received news that the Huns had been driven away. As Siegfried flirted with Brunhild, Hagen warned him, "You fled your father. I lost my home." Burgundy is now our shared homeland. When we return, be loyal to Kriemhild." Siegfried embraced him, promising to treat her well. Peace returned to Burgundy, but Siegfried grew restless and his followers slowly departed. Sigrid had repeatedly asked Kriemhild to explore the world with him, but she was the princess of Burgundy and refused to abandon her people. Meanwhile, Siegfried began to sense that Gunther's attitude toward him was changing. Sigrid's rising fame and achievements had begun to overshadow the king himself. At the same time, Gunther had already noticed a growing bond between Siegfried and Brunhild, which only deepened his unease. During a celebration banquet, Siegfried insulted one of Gunther's younger brothers. Enraged, Gunther publicly scolded Siegfried and humiliated him by reminding everyone he was merely a vassal. Their relationship deteriorated rapidly after that. Gunther was increasingly consumed by jealousy and anger. Even Hagen, who attempted to mediate between them, came under suspicion. Gunther began to question Hagen's loyalty. One night, Gunther confided in Hagen, revealing that Brunhild had ridden out of the city. He had secretly followed her and seen her meeting with Siegfried in private. Hearing this, Hagen finally lost his composure and asked where Siegfried was. Gunther replied bitterly that no one ever knew. He came and went as he pleased. Even Kriemhild was unaware of her husband's whereabouts, and her tears seemed to mean nothing to Sigrid. Siegfried showed no concern for the Burgundians' admiration. He was a wanderer who would never change for anyone. Hagen understood the underlying message. Siegfried was destined to disrupt the fragile order of their family. To prevent that day from coming, he knew what had to be done. Siegfried had to die. Soon after, Hagen invited Siegfried to hunt deer in the forest. They managed to bring down a white stag. Meanwhile, back in the palace, Kriemhild awoke with a start, gripped by a vague sense of doom. While Siegfried was washing his hands, Hagen had a chance to assassinate him from behind. But instead of striking, he threw Belong, his weapon, to Siegfried and challenged him to a fair duel. Though Siegfried was immune to weapons, Hagen's relentless training began to wear him down. Gradually, Hagen drove Sigrid back into a ravine and forced him under the water. In the struggle, Sigrid managed to grab a sword from the riverbed and stab Hagen in the thigh. Wounded, Hagen began to falter. Sigrid held a blade to his throat, and Hagen closed his eyes, accepting his fate. But in that moment, Gunther appeared. He stabbed Sigrid from behind, piercing his shoulder and killing him. Hagen rose and urged the king to flee immediately. No one must see a king kill a hero. After Gunther left, Hagen noticed Alberic standing nearby. But as he approached, the shadowy figure faded into the shape of a dead tree. Hagen returned to the city carrying Sigrid's corpse, and announced that he had slain him in a duel. The news devastated the pregnant Kriemhild. Brunhild released a grief-stricken scream that echoed through the palace. From that day, Hagen was branded the enemy of all. Kriemhild, cursing him with all her pain, declared that he would live long enough to serve Sigrid's son when the child grew up.